All right, Eric, you ready?
Sure.
All right, man. I appreciate it again. Um, Thank you for the folks that are signed in and your participation. I'm going to just chat real quick. If you have a question throughout this presentation, please just type in. I'm going to actually put the first message in. Um, and if you have a question, just reply to that or send a link or send a message through this the chatting on Ring Central, which would be on the right hand side. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce Eric Reber. Eric is one of our franchisees in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. Eric, if you don't mind, maybe just give us a quick intro to your studio, and then I want to dig a little bit deeper into the past. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Reber, as Steve said. I'm an owner, startup, basically a franchise startup from ground up. We started in 2012. Actually, opened our doors in December of 2012. So really, kind of 2013 was our start. So about 12 years, going on 13 here. People.
All
So I don't call it a suburb anymore, but yeah, that's kind of our story, and we're going from there.
All right, so Eric, just like a lot of the folks that are on this call or in the future, if they're watching this, um, I want to just briefly touch on what was your work history prior to SpeedPro, and then I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And I think Eric might be having some technical difficulties here. Hey, Eric, I think we lost you for a second. If you
Yeah, it
could
looked like it froze up there for a minute.
Okay, if you could just talk to us a little bit about your work history prior to SpeedPro. What were you doing? And then I want to talk about why SpeedPro after that.
Yeah, no, good, great question. It's a great story. So I was going to college, getting my degree in business, and started working part time for UPS, and got promoted up there to a supervisor. Ended up being a manager after I graduated. Went on to several other transportation companies. Left UPS, and that's what kind of brought me out. I'm originally from Ohio, and it brought me out here to the Phoenix area. Was with a company that I was working with at the time. That company got bought out, and we ended up laying off the majority of the people here in North America. It was about 10,000 people. I laid my staff off, and then got laid off as well in 2011, and was actually looking for somewhere to go back into I didn't want to go back into the transportation industry, but somewhere in with a corporate company that I could utilize my skill sets in logistics and other means around there. So anything along those lines. And my family did not want to leave the Phoenix area as well, so it kind of limited me to this area. But to go on with that story, I started interviewing with several companies. I couldn't find anything that was a good fit. At the time, I had no thoughts of starting a business, buying a franchise, buying a new business, an ongoing business, anything of that sort. And through some networking, I was introduced to a broker for franchises, which I guess I never even knew that existed out there. I've heard of headhunters, but I've never heard of a broker for franchises. Again, when I was in transportation, I was in the operations side of things. So I did not have anything to do with sales, and really talked to everybody daily about brown boxes. We just didn't talk about other companies. We had a sales force that went out and got solicited and got all of our business for the company. So anyway, it was through that broker that I got introduced to SpeedPro. And my first thought was, I don't know anything about printing. I can barely put paper in the printer, my home printer. I have no design background whatsoever. Why on earth would I be interested in SpeedPro? And it wasn't until I got introduced to SpeedPro and was told about what their focus is, basically their business model is for the owner. And that was to be out there networking and working on the sales, some of the marketing, but typically just working on the sales part of it, networking and running the business. and you hire the experts to do the installations, to do the design work, to do all the production work, run the printers, etc. Like, okay, well, I could do that. Well, I ended up visiting one of the Speed Pros that was here up in North Scottsdale. They're still here today. They've got new owners up there, but under the previous owner, I went up there and visited, and lo and behold, that owner was actually had worked at DHL, which was one of our biggest competitors when I was in transportation. So we ended up trading stories, and I just kind of fell in love with looking at his studio and what they do. And I think the thing that intrigued me most was that he said, you know what, at SpeedPro, we're just out there to try and help businesses grow. And that really resonated with me. And the fact that, too, that it was a B2B company. We're not on a retail location. We're not just waiting for somebody to walk in the door. We're out there really working with other businesses that could be small to medium to even large businesses to work on ways to help them come up with solutions. And when I was in operations, that was kind of my forte, was really working on solutions and contingencies for our networks. So after doing my due diligence and going out and listening to or making calls and listening to several other owners, come to find out it was just a variety of background of owners that had nothing to do but at the time with printing or with design. And all of them, everybody that I talked to, I think it was like 10, maybe 12 people, all had similar stories. It was that they were either displaced, they retired early and said, well, I want something else to do now for the remainder of my working life, or it's usually one of those two. So I kind of felt like, yeah, I was in the same boat. And the one thing that resonated with me, and again, going into SpeedPro with having no background whatsoever, was support. If I didn't have support by a home office or by the other owners that are out there, I would have never gotten into this because, again, I know nothing about this business at the time. And so I really counted on having some really good support out there. Sorry, that's a long answer, Steve, to your question, but hopefully that answers it for you guys.
Yeah, Eric, amazing job. In fact, I heard that story 2 months ago for the first time, and you were spot on. So again, anybody on this call, that was a true story. The other thing I want to maybe just talk about. So just like a lot of people, right? They were in your shoes. If you could kind of go back to 2011, I know it was a long time ago, but what other opportunities were you looking at? You were exposed to a broker. A lot of the folks on this call are as well exposed to a broker, so they're looking at home services franchises. Maybe it's health care, or health, provider franchises. What was it about SpeedPro that made you pull that trigger that you felt like, okay, this is the next opportunity? And then fast forward, here we are in 2025, and you and I are talking.
Okay, so this is kind of what solidified also my decision in doing this. So I met with the broker on a Wednesday, and he went through and said, okay, I want you to answer a bunch of questions that I have about your skill sets, about your background. I think there was a little bit of financial in there as well. And then what he does is try to fit you into a franchise where your skill sets match similar owners that have been very, very successful in that franchise. Okay. It's almost like I call it a cookie cutter. They're made cookie cutters, and they're seeing which one that I will fit into, meaning that I should have good success if I decide to pursue one of those. So I met with him on a Wednesday. He gave me all of those. And then he said on Saturday, I actually have a kind of a workshop, if you will, for prospective buyers. And he said there's going to be probably 10 to 15 other people there that are looking to buy a franchise. And I just want to take about an hour and a half and go through some of the ins and outs of franchising, some of the things that you need to look for, et cetera. And if you recall, I just mentioned too that I had done so this was on a Saturday. So I thought, okay, I went up there and met with them on Saturday. And if you remember, I had talked about meeting the owners of Scottsdale. Well, he always brings into these workshops somebody who has actually purchased a franchise through him as kind of a testimonial, right? So again, I had not made a decision on SpeedPro. I hadn't even been introduced to SpeedPro at this time. So I meet with him on a Saturday. He brings in the wife of the owner. Well, there was a husband and wife ownership, but she was the wife and brought her in, obviously from SpeedPro up in Scottsdale. So at the end of his presentation, he introduces her and she kind of gives her story. Well, come to find out, that's where she's mentioned that her husband actually worked for DHL. And I thought, okay, wait a minute here. All right, that's my same industry. Why on earth would he get into doing, printing of all things? She must have all the experience, right? So after the meeting was over, I said, can I have, a few minutes of your time? Well, a few minutes ended up being about an hour and a half. So we talked about our stories and how familiar they were. Well, come to find out, she had a degree in biology. It wasn't even in printing at all. And it ended up that they had started a family right after they had graduated. And lo and behold, she'd really never practiced her or utilized her degree. So she's into this now as well. I said, well, okay. And, ask her about what sold them on it, et cetera. And she said, well, why don't you come in on Monday and meet my husband and view our studio? So on Monday, I drove up to North Scottsdale from here. It's about 30 minutes. Met her husband up there. We traded horror stories about the transportation business. And he had been kind of on the IT side. I was on the operations side. But again, a lot in common. And I said, what was it that really sold you on this? And again, it goes back to a lot of the things that I talked about, was that they're really looking for people that they feel will work well in a SpeedPro and that you don't need that experience as well. So again, this was on a Monday. So we had lunch, we talked, everything else. And that's where I kind of thought, wow, this is something I could probably do. If there's one transportation guy that can do it, why can't a second guy get into it? And he had started out really strong and done very well. So any which way, I go back and meet with the broker on Wednesday. The broker gives me, he says, I got option A, B, and SpeedPro. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And he had no idea that I was doing this all behind the scenes over the past week. So it just struck me, and one of them was healthcare that they came up with, which I thought that's probably not a good fit for me. I'm just not that, I don't have that big F in my skill set as far as Myers-Briggs. If any of you folks are familiar with Myers-Briggs. So I kind of thought, well, that's probably not a good fit there. But the fact that he said SpeedPro and that I'd already been there and had already gotten used to it, I went home and told my wife, I go, the moons are aligning, the planets are aligning for this thing. It just looks like this thing could be the one. And it's crazy because I've never owned a business. And I thought, well, and she's like, well, I'd say go with it and go meet them. Well, fortunately at the time, their headquarters was here in Scottsdale. So I got a chance to drive up there, meet with the executive, the CEO at the time, talk to some of the employees that were there, et cetera, and really just get that feel. And I could feel that's where I learned about all the support as well. And so that's kind of the other part of that story of how I was actually introduced to SpeedPro through a broker.
Thanks, Eric. And it's funny, Guy, you don't have to unmute, but we had a similar experience a couple of weeks ago while we were in Denver. Okay, let's go back again, back to 2011. You executed your franchise agreement. What did you open up with in regards to equipment? How big was your staff? And maybe talk a little bit about your location, because the video or the pictures that I have, was that the same location that you've been in since you executed your franchise agreement?
Yeah, so the location is exactly the same. And at the time, back in 2012, 11, it was pretty difficult. Actually, 2012, it was pretty difficult in terms of finding. So what I was looking for was to find a space that I could lease, but it had to have some build out done. And I really didn't want to have to take out a loan and have that over my head, to start with. I thought, what if I could build this into the actual lease? And so finding a landlord that would agree to that was very difficult, as well as finding the right location. So I wanted to make sure that I was in a location that was easy to access via highways, et cetera, for folks that were coming to pick up stuff, or for me to get out and visit other businesses as well. So we did find one. It did take some time. And then there was about a month or two in terms of the build out that happened to get it to align. But the other part of this, which was fantastic, was, I really didn't have to worry about necessarily finding I didn't have to go out and find my own printers, didn't have to go out and find a lot of the equipment, any of that kind of stuff, because it was all basically a turnkey. So all of the equipment was decided on already. Now they've actually done it into where you have packages. So you can make decisions on what equipment you think you might need, et cetera. And always, if there's questions, they will help you through that as well. But I started out with just a roll-to-roll printer. I had a laminator and a cutter. And we're in the same location that we are today. We've getting very close to outgrowing it. We've added a flatbed, which is one of the pictures in the background if you saw. But it is definitely getting a little tight in here. So I'm probably going to be out maybe another year or so before I look, but it's definitely in the near future that I will be looking for a new place that I can actually add. So we're at about 3,000 square feet right now, which was kind of right in the middle of where SpeedPro said, yeah, that should work for you. You've got to have the kind of overhead door in the back, warehouse area where you can bring vehicles in to do the wraps and stuff like that, as well as house a lot of the product and stuff. But we're at 3,000 square feet. Like next, I'd like to probably do something around the 4,000 or 5,000 square feet as we add more equipment, et cetera. One of the things that I learned really quickly too was that, again, it's mostly equipment based. So, for example, I don't have a router or cutter that cuts actually substrates right now. If I were to do that, I would limit. I wouldn't need additional people to do that. I actually would probably, the person that I have doing a lot of the finishing work right now would take a lot of that work away from them. So that would allow me to utilize that person for something else, such as maybe installs, et cetera. So the equipment's a great piece because you can have your production manager actually operate all of these from one location at his desk in the back and have things running in 3 different printers, have stuff running through a cutter and multiple, all at the same time. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're adding people, you're adding equipment, which again, remember that equipment can run 24/7 and doesn't take days off and typically doesn't get sick either. So,
and I'm going to go through some of these pictures in a little bit, but I appreciate the background on the location, why you chose it. I've been there, Eric. I love how you've grown into it. There's a couple pictures here that show your your conference room. All things that are here's the conference room. I mean, you've grown into it well, and you're right. The cutter would be another space kind of human Tetris, how you would figure all that out. But all right, talk to us a little bit about your role. So once you got the location built up, you've got the printer, plotter, laminator. I'm assuming you hired a production person. What was your role in the beginning, and then talk to us how maybe that evolved over time.
sure. So yeah, at the time, I did hire a production manager that could run the equipment, do all the printing, did the finishing work as well, and then between himself and myself, we actually went out and we would do some installs. And these were little installs. I mean, nothing big like huge murals or doing things like a full vehicle wrap, which, even today, I have outside sources that I use 1099s in order to accomplish that. That way, I don't have to have somebody on staff that can actually do a full vehicle wrap with complex curves, et cetera, when only about a third of my business is in vehicle graphics. And typically, we're not doing full wraps. We're actually doing partial wraps, or what we call spot graphics on vehicles, which are much easier to do from an installation standpoint. And then if it requires going out to a res business to do installs on windows, things like that, again, that's typically not a big deal. But I found myself doing a lot of that because, again, we didn't have a lot of business coming in at that time. If you're buying an existing SpeedPro, you're probably not going to be doing much of that. But as time went on, since I was a startup, I found it that I needed more help to do the install parts and to and free me up so that I could do the networking, that I could do the sales, that I could actually go out there and call on individuals. So as I grew, which again, I had a production manager and we had what was called at this time a marketing coordinator who was responsible for helping me do the estimates, responsible for answering the phones, for taking information from new customers, adding them to the creating accounts for them. And then again, if it was something that they needed help on, they would wait till I was free, and then I would help them go through and to do all that. We've grown since then to where I've got 4 individuals who, and one of those is my production manager. Again, handles all of that. We've got one that does finishing work and installations. I've got what I call an office manager now, where I'm at the point that I'm trying to, again, get more free time for myself and give her more of the actual operations. And so she's handling all of the more or less day to day. And then I have my 4th individual who does works with our wholesalers directly, and then also coordinates all of our installations, whether it's internal or whether it's external, gets pricing for everything, coordinates all of that to make sure that all of our installs go off without a hitch and that they meet the client's expectations as well. So we've grown to that to where now I've gotten the opportunity to really work more on the business. It took a while, but again, that's what everybody says, no matter what business you're in, is that as the owner, you've got to work on the business and not in the business. So unless somebody's out for vacation or a day off, whatnot, I might jump in and do some estimating, just to keep it so that I don't lose that ability to understand how to do that. But at the same time, again, it's really being able to also work with your staff in order to cross train so that everybody understands, hey, if we've got our production manager out for a week, does that mean that printing stops? No, by all means not. So I've got my finishing person that can step in and do some printing as well. And then always, if it comes down to it, and I absolutely need help, I've got, I think, 5 other SpeedPros that are here in the Phoenix area that I can call up and just say, hey guys, I need some help. Can you print a few things for me? And we have what's called a buddy studio pricing, in which those studios absolutely will help you out. So even in the meantime, when you start up, if you're a new startup and you don't have all your equipment, you can definitely count on, if there's somebody in your particular area, another SpeedPro, for them to help you out, assist you, answer questions, etc., about getting started in this business and helping you produce things as you get going as well. So, but that turnkey was a key for me, and then also having that ability to go out and network and introduce people, I guess, to SpeedPro, which was still kind of new to folks here in Phoenix. I got a chance to do that while we were searching for a location, starting to build my wholesale, all that while. And then finally, when we got to the point where build out was complete, hired employees, that sort of thing. And yeah, it was just up and go.
All right, you hit on 2 things that I want to go back just a little bit. So you talked a little bit about driving the business and having a marketing coordinator. When you think back, and maybe this is a twofold question, but what was the biggest driver of the business? And I'm assuming you, but also what else? And then what's the biggest driver now that you're almost 15 years into this?
Yeah, I think for me, it was having been in the corporate world for so long, it was kind of interesting, starting out a new business, from the ground up. And, you think about, if you go into your corporate life, you go into the office and your office is clean, the restrooms are clean, and, somebody takes care of that. Somebody pays the bill so you can turn the lights on. Well, now that's all on you. And so I really like the part that everything was up to me as the driver to decide on how is this business going to be run? How do I want to proceed forward? And what's the best or fastest way that I can grow the business? And it was through other owners is where I kind of got a lot of that. So what's nice is that all the owners, I've never run into somebody, in my 12, 15 years now that has said, hey, I don't have time to listen to you on the phone. I don't have time to answer questions right now. Yeah, it may be a matter of, hey, I need to make an appointment or just set up a time to call back. But everybody has been completely open about sharing, their ideas or their horror stories about, hey, when I started, I went down this road and I found out real quickly, yeah, probably shouldn't be doing that. And so as time progressed, that's the quickest way I found was to say, all right, look, I'm in a business that I know nothing about. Let's help. Let's take the support that the home office and that the other owners are offering us. And it's just been really, really fun and an enjoyable journey. And I'm just going to add one thing else, Steve, while I'm talking, is that so years back, we introduced a program, or SpeedPro introduced a program that was for owner groups. And so we have a group of 5 owners that get together on a call, similar to this. It's a Zoom call on a monthly basis. And it's just kind of a mastermind group. We sit there and we'll talk about everything from, hey, pricing. What's your pricing look like? Where do you source products from? I'm trying to get in with schools. Has anybody worked with schools before? What's the best way to get in with that? So it's through, one of those groups as well that SpeedPro's offered out there. And I think we've got up to like 4 or 5 of those going now. That is another way that you can utilize, that support of others out there to really help you gain some traction and get out there and grow.
Excellent. And so just so people know that he's talking about success groups, and success groups typically you're invited, once you've been a SpeedPro owner for after a year. The other thing I want to point on or make a point is, so when Eric was talking about other owners helping you in the beginning, typically what'll happen is we'll pair you up with a buddy studio, and that buddy studio will produce any type of job that you get before you're open, before you've got the equipment, before potentially you have a production manager. And then we also call that the Kickstart program. So the Kickstart program allows franchisees before they open to actually start making money, building up their customer base, utilizing the point of sale system to help drive all of that. And it's a great learning process as well. All right, Eric. So let's talk a little bit about your day in the life, okay? Because I think we talked about why you bought it, right? We talked about your location, your staff, and how you've grown it. But maybe talk to us a little bit about your day in the life. Maybe not now, but let's go back a little bit, the beginning. Because again, I'm looking at everybody here. 4 out of the 6 are looking at new studios. 2 out of the 6 are looking at a potential resale. Okay. So when you were new, and I think this relates well with even new owners that are looking at an existing studio. Just talk to us a little bit about your day in the life as new owner.
Yeah, so as a new owner, obviously there's a lot of hours that go into it, and I mean you really have to be, committed to doing this. It's not a situation where you purchase this, you hire a manager to run it, and then you go on to your next venture. You really need to have some hands-on in this. I mean, even though most people, most of the owners, again, did not have a lot of experience in this area, it was important that they were part of that in order to, again, help it grow quickly, get yourself out of the red as soon as possible. So, yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of hours, at working, which our normal hours here are 7:30 to 4 every day. But then I usually came in like one day on the weekend, and which was kind of a nice, refreshing, where there's no distractions, there's no phone ringing, etc. And then I got the ability to really work on what are my next plans? Where do I want to go with this? Is there something that I need to work on? But it helped me to take care of a lot of the clerical work of running the business as well during that time period, so that during the week I'd be freed up to be able to help answer questions, help run the operation side of things, and so on and so forth. And then as time goes on, it slowly gets better and better. So you're not working, maybe the 10-hour days, or, working, full day on the weekend, or working 2 days on the weekend. It slowly starts going away in terms of, so now I think if I work 40 hours, which I typically don't anymore, it's kind of unusual. Only when typically I might have somebody off on vacation for a week or so, that might put me more time in. Or if there's something else that I'm working on that for the business that I think, hey, I just need a little extra time, and I'll either take my work home, work on it in the evenings, or I'll come back to work and work on it here. But typically my objective, again, with Stephanie, and again, she's our office manager, is to be able to, again, continue to push towards her on doing things on a regular basis so that, again, I can free more of my time up as time goes on. And I'm to the point of where, I'm starting to look at preparing for to either sell the business, sell the SpeedPro that I have, or continue on with it, but just again, pull myself 90% out of the business and maybe, have a day or two where I come in for a little bit of time to work on it, and then continue again to just, grab from the revenues and stuff like that we're producing. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards, but I'm starting to think about it. I'm 61. I'll turn 62 this year. And I'm kind of getting up there. My wife and I are talking about retirement coming up. So could be another 2 or 3 years. It might be another 7 or 8. I'm not sure yet. But I'm starting to think about that. And as I move towards that, I want to make sure that everything is set up at the studio level so that, again, it becomes kind of a package deal that everybody understands employee-wise, and that if it were a new owner, it would be really easy to take over.
Well, selfishly, Eric, I hope it is 7 to 8 years from now. So, but well, and we'll help guide you through that process. I want to go back. Um, when I was in a studio last week, and it's intimidating to see all the different rolls of vinyl and all the rolls of banner material, and then you got a big organizational area where you've got all your flat substrates. How long did it take, or where you felt comfortable selling? Was it out of the gates? Did you have to kind of fall before you could actually start to walk and run? But talk to us about that experience, Eric, because I think that's part of the intimidation is, yeah, I don't know anything about the large and wide format graphics when you really break it down, but then it's, oh, what? Yeah, I know nothing about the product either.
Yeah. So a lot of it was learning, I got, obviously there's resources that the home office provides, that can help kind of get you acquainted with some of the stuff that's out there. But I really just went out and I was really honest with a lot of the folks. I remember when before the studio even opened that I went out and started working on my wholesale network, which for those of you that haven't heard about the wholesale, it's working with other small printers that do business cards, that do flyers, that sort of stuff, working with trophy shops, working with print brokers as well, or graphic designers that don't have somebody to send their clients to from a printing standpoint. So the idea was that all of these people have, a lot of contacts, they've got a lot of business going on, and this is a great way, even though I'm selling it at wholesale, that I can get us up out of the red as quickly as possible. So I'm trying to go back. Somebody ask me the question one more time, Steve.
Yeah, and I actually, I'm gonna. So we were talking about learning the different products,
Right.
but before you do that, so I try to talk to everybody about wholesale, and I'm glad you brought it up. I had that written down. Um, Talk to us a little bit about how you penetrated the wholesale industry, and I want to reiterate, wholesale are small sign companies, print companies, trophy companies, event planners, ad agencies, marketing firms. It's businesses that are selling finished products that we provide, but they don't actually have the equipment. But talk to us about how you penetrated that in the beginning, because I think for all the new studios, that's low-hanging fruit in my opinion. That's an opportunity before you even start introducing yourself. This is what we do. I can help your business grow. So go ahead. I didn't mean to take the words out of your mouth.
Yeah, no, that leads in perfect. So again, I started out the business as 100% wholesale. And now I'm probably somewhere around the 25 to 30% range of our business is in wholesale. And I always want to try to keep that because, again, this is continual business that comes in repetitively. Some of it daily, some of it weekly, some of it maybe once or twice a month, but at least it's coming in on a regular basis. And again, when you do it, it becomes very easy because typically all your wholesalers will send you print ready artwork, which means that we don't have to get in and design it. We don't have to do anything with it. We simply get the file, we upload it to the RIP. I should say not we, the production manager does that and then gets the print out. We then call the client, let them know that it's ready to go, and they come and pick it up. Really simple, really quick. The big thing was selling them on the part that, again, my staff understands that we will never, ever back sell or try to back sell to one of your customers. If we do that, we'll lose your business, and we'll probably, I'm sure the word would go out around the printing business that we're doing things like that, and we would lose all of our wholesale business. So that was kind of critical. The way that I went out, though, was, again, I didn't want to really try to pretend I knew more than what I knew, because that's just going to get you into a situation to where you're like, I don't know the answer, and you've got an owner who thinks that you maybe should have the answer. So my approach to it was that, and I've talked to other people, other owners before I actually, again, had gone out and done this, but one of the things that I saw was that at small businesses, you have a lot of people that will walk in the door trying to sell you something, whether it's insurance, whether it's, benefits for employees, et cetera. And they just feel like they can come in, sit down, and spend, a half hour of your time. Like we've got nothing better to do. So I thought, well, how can I go and visit these places, get in and out of there within less than 15 seconds and give them an opportunity or make them say yes to me coming back. So what I did was I came up with this kind of a sales bit for the wholesaler. So I took a business card. And so I'd go out there, I'd explain to them real quickly. I'd say, my name is Reber. I'm opening up a SpeedPro. We're going to do large format printing. We're not open yet, but I'm out here to try to work with different folks out. I'd like to bring by a brochure next week that shows more and more about what we can do. Would that be okay? What are they going to say? Sure. I don't really care. Yeah, come on back next week.
Right.
Well, I did. So then I would make it an effort. I'd go back and I would say, hi, I don't know if you remember me. I was here last week. My name's Reber. I'm opening up a SpeedPro that does large format printing. I think it would be a great source for products that your current printing does not provide to your clients. We do it all behind the scenes. Here's the brochure that I said that I would bring that kind of outlines the things that we do. I'd like to bring by an example next week of a print that we can do. It's supposed to, and would that be okay? They're like, again, knock yourself out. Go ahead. And I come back the next week. Well, by that time, and I bring them a small sample of our print, and I looked at them and I would say, well, this is coming off of our printer, and it prints up to, which I knew already, and we printed it or had somebody else print it at a very, very high quality, which is typically for stuff that's going to be viewed really up close. And so I would say our printer prints up to 1400 DPI. Is that good? And that kind of helps people go, okay, he really is an owner that really has no clue, but he's honest. And I ended up picking up a lot of business that way. And then over time, I just said, I've got a great staff that can answer questions, that can help, guide your staff through if they've got questions. We'll put together estimates for you, immediately send that over to you. And if you need help in terms of understanding where the market stands for selling this at retail, just let me know. And I've already done that footwork, and I know kind of where the market here is in the Phoenix area. And I can give you what I would suggest as a markup or, a final price for that product. And so those are the things that I use to kind of get, acclimated with it. And then again, just, you got to do your homework. And I was out there kind of reading things, understanding kind of what different materials were, going through the materials that the home office provides. Now we've got videos, we've got just a ton of more things that are available now than were when I first started. But once you get into understanding that, your knowledge will start to grow, so that now I feel like I am that solution guy that I can walk into a business who says, hey, I want to put something on my walls that kind of creates, a certain vibe, if you will, which is called experiential graphics. And so now I feel like I'm real good at being able to help them decide on what works and what doesn't work. And I won't hesitate to tell people, yeah, that's a silly idea because you're just not going to get your ROI out of it. If I have an attorney that comes in and says, I want to get my vehicle wrapped, either one, your ego's huge because you're typically at the office or at work and you're not driving this thing around. So it's not going to get you, your ROI off of it. If you're a plumber, oh my God, it's probably the number one way that you're going to get business. And if you break it out for them as well to say, think of this over a 5-year period. Yes, it's expensive to start with, but think of it as a 5-year period, and you end up spending less than a cup of coffee a day with that as your marketing, and you're going into the areas that work for you, et cetera. So I don't hesitate to tell people when, and then I think they feel better and more comfortable and we're easier to be repeat business or to refer me out because they know they're going to get an honest answer, that I'm not going to take them down a road to give them something that they don't need or that won't work for them.
Yeah, and that definitely, ties into people like to do business with people that they like. And, being likable is a great attribute being a business owner. Um, okay, so I wanna we've got 15 or so minutes, and I want to make sure that I ask all these different questions. I do have 3 questions right now that I need to ask. But before we do that, um, okay, we talked about the strategic partnership, and again, the strategic partnership is allowing you to work with, competitors, small print shops, small sign shops. But talk to us a little bit about our competitive advantage versus like a Fast Signs or a Signorama, maybe a Minutemen. Do you go up against those? Because a lot of folks on this call, maybe that's why they're talking to us. Is they initially looked at maybe one of them, and then here we are talking now.
Yeah, so I think my biggest competitive advantage, or SpeedPro's biggest competitive advantage, is really in working through solutions with customers. That we are always solution based, that we are creating things to help businesses grow as well. I tell them as well that I have designers that have degrees in graphic design, obviously, but they also have degrees in advertising and marketing. So they know the parts of what's going to help, a business. So for example, on vehicle wraps, they know the pieces that we need to have on there as far as who are you, what do you do, how do I get a hold of you, and the last one is, do you have reviews out there? Because everybody likes to see reviews now. So those 4 items, and then where they're placed on the vehicle, are critical to actually making sure that people remember that. So we want people to maybe drive by or see that plumber drive by and think, well, I got no use for a plumber right now. But when the time comes, we want them to remember that truck and we want them to remember that name. So they create in a way that I think gives us a competitive advantage as well. The other part that, from what I hear out there, as far as the competition, really comes in the name. It's Speed Pro. So I've had a lot of people come to us and say, "Wow, what you guys are quick. I didn't think I could get that turned around that fast." Absolutely, I'm all about get it in, get it out, get it in, get it out. We're not going to sit on this thing and wait. Again, back to the vehicle graphics, I saw too that there were a lot of places that would drop off vehicles from the trades, and the vehicle would sit there for a week. Well, what's happening? That vehicle is not making any money for that owner for 1 week. So what I thought is, well, how can I do this that I can get it in and out in one day? Well, spot graphic, that's pretty easy because it doesn't take maybe a few hours and it's in and out. Well, what about a full wrap on, a box truck? We're doing the cab and the back and everything else. And it was like, well, what if I just put more people on it? So that's what I do, and what all my installers that I actually outsource to understand that everything that we do or that I do has to be done in one day. And so they'll bring on typically more people that they know of, et cetera. They'll give me a price to start with, but then they'll bring on whatever they need to get that thing done in one day. And boy, I tell you what, that makes a huge, huge difference out there in the trades, as well as other people out there as well that just, don't want to be leaving that vehicle for, days and days and days. It'd be like taking your, driver to work, vehicle and saying, well, I got to drop it off to get a oil change, and the guy's going to have it for a week. It's like, well, what do you mean a week? I just can't see it. So that's the other focus that I really have on. So solutions, getting things turned around quickly and being the pro. We are the pros out there that understand this business, what it takes to do this business, and how we can get you, the client, the best service and products because we are the pros.
And and I want to emphasize something too, because we don't have sign in the name of our business, right? It's SpeedPro. We provide a professional product to meet our customers' deadlines, right? And you're right, it's a solution. But when you put signs in the name and you start saying yes to a lot of signs, and you got to pull permits, permitting takes a long time. That's why we've never shied away from, this is our core business, which is large and wide format graphics. These are jobs that our equipment can produce quickly, rapidly, efficiently, and you could be installed or picked up in a timely manner, right? I want to talk a little bit about the 1099s. So maybe two questions. Number one, was finding 1099s difficult? And do you have 1099s that do your full wraps? It sounds like your team can handle partial wraps in-house, but talk to us about finding 1099s maybe in the beginning, and then what's your solution for full wraps?
So there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. One is to check with other studios. If you're in an area where there is one or two or three, or in my case, 5 different studios, I can call them and say, who do you use? Right? Which, again, they're going to give you a good referral because they're part of the family, if you will. I'd say secondly would be to go online, and a lot of the 1099s that I have are 3M certified, or they're certified through other manufacturers such as Avery or Oracle. And you can pull up, and there's a actual area where you can see, once you put in your zip code, where those installers are located or where they are in your particular area. And then it's just to kind of reach out for them. And so what I did was I'd have them come to the studio, and I started doing kind of interviews, if you will, to kind of understand, here's my expectations, as an owner, I need to send, here's my request for an estimate. I expect a 24-hour turnaround in terms of that estimate. Here's where I brought in, you've got to be able to do this in one day. So if you don't have other employees or, other contacts, that would be something that you would have to have so that I could bring you on board. Because at times we are doing a lot of a big wrap in one day, and it's going to take 2 or 3 people to get it done. So that was the second thing. And then it was really just sitting down and talking with them to understand, are they, a true good business, or is it just some kid who decided, hey, I like exotic cars and I want to do wrapping, and, that type of thing. And even if they go out and get a certification on it, they may not be good business people to work with. So you want somebody that's going to be professional. And then once you find that one person, guess what? They know everybody else out there. So I just would ask them, okay, I've got you, and if I can't get you on a certain date because your schedule is booked up, et cetera, who would you go to as an owner? Who would you call? And so I get 2 or 3 from them. So now I've got a list of about, anywhere from 3 to 5 installers. And I don't go out there. They're typically all, they talk. So they're all pretty much very close to the same amount. So it's not about going out there and finding the best price. What I have it set at, and I always make sure they understand that, again, I'm hiring them. So it's not like they have to go out and find a client. So I expect wholesale pricing so that, again, I can mark it up a little bit and, again, have some profit on that installation, but more so on the printing side of it. But that's typically how I go out and find those 1099s. And the same thing with finding, outside designers. I don't have, my people fortunately have 3 out of the 4 have design capability, but I don't want them doing full designs because it's so time consuming. I want to hear the printers going and have them doing the things that they can to, again, help the company. I can outsource or use a 1099 designer. So I've got 3 designers that I can go to, and anything that's a large thing that needs, a design from ground up, They understand, it may require them to come in and meet in our conference room with the client to talk about design. We may do a Zoom call, but again, they understand what my needs are in terms of the turnaround time, et cetera. And I understand their needs as far as making sure that we limit um, the number of redos, I guess if you call it, on the I can't think of the right word, Steve, up me, on the actual design itself. So renditions, that type of thing. So we try to keep our hands around that. That was one of the things that I didn't do right away. And I can give you some great horror stories sometime about having clients where, it got into 15 different revisions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing's going on and on. I got to put a stop to it, but I really want the business. But so I finally got to that point and we narrowed it down. And now we do 3 revisions. And then outside of that, it's on an hourly cost.
It's a great answer. And hey, Rick, I'm going to ask your question right now. How large is your overhead or your garage door? Is it 12 feet?
Ours, it's more than 12 feet. I think it's 18 feet. It's almost to the ceiling, which is 20 feet. So yeah, ours is 18 feet, which again allows me to bring in the bigger box trucks, et cetera. We do have an HVAC system back there as well. So when I bring the vehicles in, it never really gets too hot here in Arizona, right? So yeah, in the summertime when it's like 130 out there, I can bring vehicles in, turn the AC on. We can clean them down. It helps keep the vehicle cool as well as the installers so that the material is easier to put on. And that does come down a bit. So there is some restrictions on height of things that I can bring in, but I have more of a restriction on the size. Some of the SpeedPros out there have a install bay that can take up to a 53 footer and the tractor as well inside their actual facility. Mine, we can probably get a 12-foot box truck in there. But again, most of the time I can bring in, like, we'll park half of it in front wise and then do the front, and then we'll flip it around and do the back. There's a lot of different things you can do as far as creativity. The main thing is you want to try to not have to do it outdoors, just because of especially here with the amount of dust that we get, out of the desert that comes up and gets things dusty very quickly. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting a Band-Aid on a dirty finger type of a scenario.
And do your installers, so your 1099 installers, do they utilize your facility to do the wraps, or do they take the vehicle to their facility, or do they typically not have facilities?
So no, they all are expected to come to my facility to do those. There are certain situations, though. For example, we have a nonprofit that was rebranding in January of this year. We were awarded their contract to redo 10 semi-trailers, some tractors. I think we had about a half dozen box trucks, a couple of vans. And fortunately, because of the weather situation here in Phoenix, it was, we're in the 60s during the day, et cetera. So it wasn't too hot. And we also could take, and if it was really sunny, we had the ability with a tractor out there to move the vehicle. So we constantly were able to keep it in the shade at all times as well. So right now, it's starting to get warmer, which makes it, again, more difficult for us to do things outside. I know there are other studios around the country face the winter elements out there. So again, winter can be a challenge as well. So you become very creative, though, of looking for spots where if I need to bring it in, I might go to another studio. I know I use that one up in North Scottsdale. It does have that bay where you can actually bring things inside. And we did some in the summertime where we were able to bring those right inside his facility. I'd send my installers up there, and everything worked out great. I'd actually had the clients dropping it off, and I'd explain to them, why we're taking it up there, because of the fact that we just don't have the ability to put it inside here.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the process of finding a location is being flexible. I was in a studio last week that they would need a ramp to get a vehicle through their back garage door, right? And at this point, in the timeline of their business, they're like, we have an installer that has a facility, so any vehicle graphics or wraps, they have the installer do it. And eventually, as they ramp the business up, they're going to actually add a ramp. so they could bring in vehicles into their facility. All right, I got 3 minutes, and I wanna be sensitive to everybody's time. Again, appreciate everybody's participation. If you do have any last minute questions, please type them in. Um, all right, what would you do differently if you could do this all over again?
uh, I think the biggest thing for me was I took a lot of pride in the fact that, hey, how hard can this be? Of opening up a studio and running this, right? It just can't be that tough. So there was a lot of pride that I ended up after probably a good 6 to 9 months saying, look, you don't know everything. You can't do this unless you get the help. And so let's stop, trying to think that I know everything and that this is going to be easy. It's hard. And let's start at telling people, look, I'm in a difficult place. I don't know what to do. And help me, help me, help me. And so counting on those owners, calling the home office and saying, I'm not sure this is going to work at this point. I'm struggling. What can I do? And it's just amazing the outpour of assistance that can help you in fine tuning, or at least, give you that support to say, look, everybody struggles. Everybody's going to struggle at this point that you're at, but they make it through. And again, call me, next week, call me tomorrow, whatever. And it's just constantly getting that affirmation that, this can be successful. And I'm proof to that. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say is, again, don't be scared to just ask questions and reach out constantly to others for assistance.
It's such a great point because, yeah, being a business owner in the very beginning doesn't mean you know everything. And that's why a lot of us join franchises is because we don't know and we know we've got the answers. All you got to do is ask and your questions will get answered. All right, my final question, maybe for you to make a comment on, is there anything that you feel like a candidate should consider after this call? And that could be anything, Eric. Everybody is equipped with calling owners. Before they make a decision. Every owner gets to meet me over Zoom like this or in person, visiting a studio. Is there anything that you feel is important um, for these candidates to consider before we let you go?
Yeah, I think just kind of writing down, maybe and if this is your first, experience to an owner, if you will, I think it's being able to write down some questions that you maybe come out of this that, or ones that I've answered already that you can ask, a different owner and have that list of things to be able to kind of go through. I think some owners might go out there and they can tell you a story, but are they going to answer, the exact questions that you're looking for? Possibly not. So I would kind of start putting together. That's what I did. I put together a list of questions that I thought, okay, well, this is really some of the things that I want to know. And SpeedPro says they give support, but do they really give as much support as they say they're going to? So I want to hear it from another owner and understand. Ask those questions. What were some of the silly things that you did on startup that you look back and you go, no, I wish I would have done that different. What are some of the things that you are really proud of that you did that think that you can go up to that or help move you up as well. So it's, again, considering all of that information together as a whole, I think, and writing those questions down is probably the best way to go about that, to understand and be able to talk to folks regarding that.
Excellent. Well, Eric, amazing job, man. I really appreciate it. I mean this. An hour really flew by, so I appreciate your answers. They were very thorough. Thank you, everybody on this call, for your participation. For the folks that are going to be watching this in the future, I hope you enjoyed it as well. And Eric, we'll be in touch with you shortly after this call to show some gratitude and have a